Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Director of Events Programming at MediaPost, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women brand marketers today. And with me is Ellie Off, and she is the VP of Brand Marketing and Innovation at Everyman Jack. Hey, Ellie, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you here. So I have to admit, Sarah has suggested you, and Sarah's given me so many women, and like really, I mean, it's amazing how many amazing women there are out there. And so I always first will like look and do my snooping, and I was just like, wow, 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 like very impressive career. So you are definitely someone that people want to hear from. So I really appreciate you agreeing to do this.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so well, I first have to say, speaking of being wow, you were recently honored with a group of other digitally minded executives. And one of the things they said, among other things, but they really pointed out the innovation that you guys and the strategy.
Mm.
Uh, Talk about that. I mean, it's all right. They described it as, or described the honorees and you as calculated risk takers. So I want to ask you that, like, how do you take risks? And I'm not talking about with campaigns and all of that and the marketing side, but on the personal side, like really in your life, has there been a risk you've taken or that you continue to take that really sort of defines you a bit?
Yeah, no, definitely. As I think about life and sort of how I've taken my career and just where I've gone, I always think about decisions of no regret. Right after business school, I was at Procter and Gamble. So, kind of epicenter of marketing and brand management, learning a ton. Had been there for almost 5 years. But deep down, I knew I wanted something different. I think it wanted potentially a smaller company, just wanted to experience something different. I had all these friends living on the coast. And so I made the decision to move out to the Bay Area. And by the way, my family's in Cincinnati too. So I was leaving like a lot of people I knew, this great job. Um, and I got a job working out in San Francisco. So I eventually got in a plane one day and sort of made that move. And that definitely was a risk. I was leaving a lot behind, leaving a career, leaving kind of a job that really, and for many people, leads to a very strong career. And it was just one of those things that been one of the best decisions I ever made. I moved out here. I found a great community of people, amazing job. So, it's led me to places like Elf Beauty, where I spent 7 years, and more recently, Everyman Jack. I discovered a world of smaller consumer products companies and realized just how much I love being in these smaller environments where I can really make an impact and drive business results. And so I think it's really been a good move for me. And that's just one example of, when I think I approach risk, I see it and I'm like, okay, like what's the worst thing that can happen? What are those benefits? What are those pros and cons? And I also look at my gut and like, what is my gut telling me? And I listen to that. And I use all those things and I do these things and sort of take these actions.
Well, yeah, and one, I think anytime you're leaving not only a job, but family and friends
Mm-hmm.
moving right there, it's exciting, but it's scary. I don't know. I remember when I
Mm-hmm.
did it, it was part of me didn't want to succeed because I wanted to go back.
Yeah.
It was sort of like I wanted
Right.
to see it. And
Right.
so I'm curious, what kind of like when you first got to, San Francisco and you got there,
Yeah.
started, building your community or just finding the job or all of those different things. But how did you keep moving forward? How did you set yourself up for success?
Yeah. So, a lot of it comes down to, and maybe it's a growth mindset of just always saying yes. So, when I moved out there, I, leveraged personal networks. So, even my undergraduate network, people that I had known, anyone said, hey, you should meet so and so. I went and met that person. So, anytime someone asked me to do something, I said yes. Because I didn't have, I was like, you know what? I don't know any better. Like, I don't have the opportunity to say no at this point. So, really leaning in and just doing and learning as much as I could about this new place where I had moved. I had managed to find a job before I left, so I was working at Yahoo. So I was transitioning to more of this tech world, kind of learning what that was about. This was back in 2010, and so really trying to learn from my colleagues and just really being a sponge. And again, just kind of not just kind of taking it all in and really trying to process it and not make any judgments. And I think that's where, if not being closed, I think you have to be really open to what's going to happen in that path you're going to take. So when I was there, I spent about a year and a half at Yahoo, and I realized, I don't know if working at a tech company is for me. So in consumer products, in brand, we always talk about ourselves as being the center of the wheel. So in brand, you're working with sales, you're working with creative, you're working with agencies, you're working with R&D, and you're that one who's really driving the business. And I think working in tech and marketing, you're not that center. That center is maybe more of a different function in product. And so I realized that I liked being that center. And I didn't realize, even when I was at P&G, how much I liked that. And so, I realized a year and a half in, I'm like, I don't know if this is the right job for me. I still like where I live. And I was able to use networks and things like that to get a job at a local vitamin company called Shift Nutrition. And so then I used that and took a leap to a new company, kind of recognizing that about myself. And that's where I found a smaller company. So Shift was 4 brands. They had recently been acquired by private equity. And so I sort of found this world and I just thrived. It was like all about like ownership and accountability and moving fast. And that set the stage for other steps that I've taken. But again, it's all about being open and learning to new possibilities and then sort of taking things as they come.
Yeah, no, and I see what you're saying in a sense, especially because I love to
Mhm.
ask also, like you, as you said, you had been,
Yeah.
when I initially introduced you, and it was like, wow, because you
Yeah.
worked for some amazing organizations. Yahoo, you just mentioned, Elf, you had mentioned, and now, of course, Everyman Jack. So you've gone from the P&Gs of the world to the
Mhm.
smaller brands. And talk about, like, do you feel like having, when you talk about the vitamin organization,
Mhm.
Sharp, was it?
Shift nutrition. Yeah.
Um, and it's smaller, so you got your hands into more things, I'm assuming, than say you would, or you might have at a P&G. And so someone
Mhm.
starting out, like, I mean, well, first let's go to even you
Yeah.
starting. Did you
Yeah.
have this vision? I mean, you were at P&G, so you kind of knew marketing, or did you? Like, how did you envision
Right.
where did you see where you are today?
Right. So I would just say, I went to P&G after business school. So I would say starting out. So if we think about people coming out of undergrad, I didn't know where I wanted to go. So I was someone who, didn't have, I know some people are like, I'm going to go be a doctor. I'm going to go be in this industry and be XYZ. I was not one of those people. I think I knew a little bit that I wanted to be somewhere where I could always learn. I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to be on a great team. I knew I loved like shopping products. Like I knew I generally liked that, but I didn't know how one made a career out of it. So with those things, I took those with me and I did corporate recruiting in college and I was interviewing from everything from investment banking to consulting. I was doing the full gamut. And I found a job, I found my way to Abercrombie and Fitch to merchandising and retail actually. So I spent a few years there and then kind of through different opportunities I end up kind of finding it. Anyway, I went from Abercrombie and then I kind of 9/11 happened and I was like, oh, is this really what I want to be doing? And so I moved to DC, which is in theory really random. But sometimes when you're 24 you do things that are random and that aren't perfectly linear, and I did it and I survived. And I kind of there I ended up working for the government for a couple years, and so it was very different. And I think went through that experience, I realized that it maybe wasn't my long term. I didn't love this long term, so I went back to business school. I was like, let's get back on course. I went back to business school, and then I went to P&G. Um, and so I think sort of for those listening, I think I've gotten to a great place, but I didn't have it all figured out. And I've really done a lot throughout the journey and always focused on, again, finding that great team, learning and building new skills with every opportunity, and just really trying to take advantage of everything and what it gives me. And then continually just being on the lookout for like what else could be out there.
Well, and it sounds like you said, you were, working for the government. Maybe it wasn't for you,
Mm-hmm.
working it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
You learned at each of those places, but you were okay to, as a word you marketers love to use, pivot. And
Right.
that is very important for anyone just starting out too. I mean, you can have that
Mm-hmm.
idea, maybe not so much, you want to be a doctor. If you're making that investment to go to school that long, change what your, specialty. So I'm just saying, but to be open to seeing what else is out there. But I think when it comes down to it, figuring out what you're truly passionate about. And
Mhm.
that's what you kept doing, it seems like along the way.
Right. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And everything that you look for, making sure that it delivers on that. Like things like, if I think about Everyman Jack, it's like I have an awesome team. I'm working on a purpose-led brand. All these key elements that when you see something, you've been through these different experiences and different filters, and you see something come up, and you're like, wow, this is perfect based on all these other learnings I have.
Yeah. And so someone starting out, because again, we sort of covered it, but if they
Yeah.
want to be you, and you obviously there's been a lot of advice you've given in terms of what we're talking about, but just that person who does know, I want to be a brand marketer and for an organization, maybe even a P&G, or do you think going
Mhm.
to that smaller company first and then to the larger company might be better for them just because maybe they're getting their hands into a lot of things and it gets them in at a certain level. I'm just curious if there's a
Yeah.
that someone would maybe benefit most from.
Yeah. I think I actually think my experience where I was able to start with a bigger company and really learn a lot of the fundamentals from experts in many cases really afforded me so much that I've been able to bring to smaller companies. And so I think for me, it was the right decision to kind of have that almost second, like college or second business school, if you will, and then be able to transfer that into a smaller company. That said, there are people out there, it's sort of whatever opportunities you have afforded to you, because some people don't necessarily have access to a big company like that. Maybe that's not where they live, or maybe that's just not what's come to life. It's like I have many amazingly talented people who work on my team who are more junior, and they're able to kind of get in their role and then leverage even the network within the company or networks outside the company to gain their expertise. And so I don't think there's one true success. Like I think mine worked well for me, but again, I see many people in my like currently who I work with who are leveraging. I think it's just if you started a smaller company, I think you have to recognize there might not be as much like at P&G, you have these insights experts who are like global insights experts who are you're reading internal white papers or something, right? And you're going to have to work a little harder for that at a smaller company, but it's possible.
Right. So you're almost like going to
Mm-hmm.
school but getting paid for it. Like, think of it that way. I thought more in terms of you might be doing more at the smaller company because you tend to wear a lot of hats, but then I can
Right.
see the other side of it. So that's a really good point. I'm curious, is there something when people first meet you that they get wrong about you?
Yeah, I think sometimes, and I've heard that I can be intimidating. So I think just kind of from a stature standpoint, I'm like almost 6 feet tall. So I think even that can contribute to that. And I can be I love my work and I can be very focused and very intense at times. I'm like incredibly positive, enthusiastic, but I think I can also just be like, okay, let's get down to it. And I think that can be a little intimidating. And I think there's always this walking as a leader, having to walk that fine line with, wanting to like kind of being intimidating and being intense and just making sure that, I never want to come across as just being intimidating. I want the team to always feel like they can contribute and they can be everyone should be able to be their true self. And so I think once people quickly get to know me, they're like, "Oh my gosh, no, she's definitely not intimidating." But I've heard that can be sort of at first blush, that can be how I come across.
Yeah. Do you think in terms of, and again, I think it's changing, but women sometimes who come across strong, it becomes a more like she's intimidating, or where maybe if a man comes across the same way, but it's taken more positively, I would say, or not to say that it's not positive when they're thinking that you're intimidating.
Yeah,
No, I just feel like, do you think women have to sort of walk a fine line there where not be too soft, but not come across like they're know-it-alls?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've definitely like read about that and I kind of read about that. I think I personally haven't had that. I haven't had that experience of where like I feel like I have to be that way to come across and to be taken seriously in any way. I think it just happens to be my nature of just like kind of being more on the intense side of things. But again, I hear that from folks and read articles and read everything about that. but I haven't sort of found that true in my personal life.
Yeah, no, and I can totally see it.
Yeah.
Just been speaking for a little bit, but I
Mhm.
definitely, you're very, what you say, you're very confident, and just very clear with what you're saying. And I feel like if I were working with you, for you, however that may be, it would be something that, yes, I would trust that, okay, this is what I need to do. But then also maybe it takes a little bit to know and see that I can also, I could see that. So definitely, because I mean,
Mhm.
it's very much a compliment. It's because you come
Mhm.
very much like that. So I want to ask you, one of your brand's taglines, Everyman Jack
Mhm.
tagline is "Be true to your nature," and it goes on to say, "Inspired by the best that nature can offer." So, who or what inspired you to be true to your nature? Like, what do you think your biggest inspiration or influence has been?
Yeah, so I would definitely say my mom, and I think that's for a couple reasons. Is she's inspired me in just in how she kind of tackles life and what she does and how she, where she's invested her time. And I think there's a couple key things. I think one, and I remember back even when I was very young, and I think I was complaining about homework or something and hadn't started it, and she was like, "You just have to start it. Like, you have to just get over the hump and just dive in and do it." And I think I remember that very distinctly. And I think I've taken that, even as we think about a bias fraction or just kind of diving into projects. And just the sooner you start, the sooner you can get into it and learn what you have to do and get it done. Right. And there's a tendency sometimes to like overthink, or maybe, sometimes, we all want like to procrastinate occasionally. Um, and then the second is just she, as long as I can remember, very much led with service and just led with purpose. So she's always been very into kind of volunteering and getting involved in the community in Cincinnati where I grew up. And I think kind of carrying that through. And even as we think about like in the community or kind of Everyman Jack, and like one of the things I love about Everyman Jack is it's very purpose led. Like we lean into social mission, and we just last week had a company volunteer event where we were kind of working to help restore a bay near our office. And so I think just that's something that I really took from her is like it's not, you always have to think about others and how we approach, and just always looking for the opportunity to give back in whatever shape or form that like that's capable for you.
Yeah, is there any in particular, because you talk about the volunteering work doing with Everyman Jack, but also just what is close to your heart? What do you really sort of lean into?
Yeah. So beyond Everyman Jack, I think one of the things is I look within our community. I think like we love it's an organization called Marin Foster Care, which is so that's just like one example of an organization in our area that is helping kids who like are foster children and help give them the tools that they need. So again, really looking at the community and like how, and I'm especially, being a mom of young kids. So I have a 4-year-old and I have an 18-month-old. So I think when I see anything that has to do with kids who don't necessarily have the opportunities that my kids have, it really, really strikes a chord. And so, how like thinking about organizations like that and how we can contribute, whether it's like time or financially, and to be able to like support those.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so being a mom, and actually
Mhm.
kind of a mom, right? So just
Yeah.
over, so that must be a lot going with the toddler and the baby. So
Yeah.
that obviously must be a challenge, but I'm not, it's just reminding me to ask you, has there been a challenge that maybe you sort of faced and were almost like, "Ah, how can I get through this?" Or just it was a big challenge and how did you get through it? Like, how did you face it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think like one thing that, again, like the balancing of like, I lead a team at work and I have this, like, we're driving a growing company. So I've got this piece of my life. And then to your point, I have these young children wanting to be a good mom, wanting to be a good partner to my husband, wanting to get involved in the community, like all these things. And wanting to be a good friend and family member. So there's just so many things that trying to juggle, and that is just on a day-to-day basis trying to figure out how do I do that well. And one thing that came up last spring actually is, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get involved in my son's preschool. So signed up for the fundraiser. Well, lo and behold, only two people signed up. So here I am, like leading the fundraiser, also trying to like lead this marketing team. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have like 2 months to like raise all this money. Um, and so it was a challenge because I was trying to do, trying to kind of wear this hat, trying to wear that hat, and wear a leadership role in both cases. And how I got through it is really kind of trying to get more help. So really leaning in and asking for help, whether it was from other parents, from my husband, kind of even from kind of some getting ideas from my coworkers, and accepting like it's not having something be perfect is okay, and taking it one day at a time. And that's just, I think, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Like, you sign up for something, you realize you're in way over your head, and you're just trying to balance all these different things. And so that was a key lesson for me, is also just ask more questions when you sign up for something. But but I think just making sure we ask for help, and accept like the reality, and give ourselves some, be patient with ourselves about what we can really achieve, and be happy with what we're able to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, I mean, everyone does, but I think women especially,
Mm-hmm.
the perfectionist or just wants everything to be perfect, right in its place, and to let go of that, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to do, but it's
Right.
obviously necessary, especially when you're taking on so many different things. So that's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. All right, so with
Yeah.
all of these challenges, what do you do for your guilty pleasure? What's just for you?
So I have a couple. One, like, I love the New York Times crossword on my phone. So probably more at the beginning of the week though, because I can't do the end of the week ones. I'm not quite there. And then I have to admit it's Bridgerton. So I think like my Netflix, like, put the kids to bed, and I'm just like, okay, I want to, I want to sit, have a moment, just like veg out kind of thing. It's definitely some Netflix shows and Bridgerton, things like that.
Awesome. Now, isn't Bridgerton coming, isn't another season coming up, or is that,
Yeah, I think so. I can't. I think it's season 4, season 3. I get confused. Yeah.
I have
I definitely get my ads on Instagram. So.
Yeah, no, I need to start. I didn't have Netflix for a long time, so I've never watched it.
Oh,
And since, but everyone
oh my
keeps,
goodness.
I've never seen it. So I guess I need to get myself streaming one time, like just do some binge watching,
Great.
catch up for the new season. Well, I think that's awesome, and I love the the crossword for the time. You need to do it every day, don't you think, in order to do Sundays? Like I feel like it brings you to that. Like if you skip a day, so I messed you up. But anyway, so I
Yeah.
used to do it a lot. Now since I moved from the city, I used to do it right on on the paper.
Um,
So and then but anyway, all right. What is it maybe? Is there something about you who people really don't know a lot about? Maybe it's inconsequential, but it's something they might be surprised that you are able
uh,
to.
yeah. So one is I was in college. I was captain of my college rugby team. So definitely not something, I think now with the Olympics, I think rugby got a little bit more press, especially with women. There were some amazing players. And so people are kind of more, but I think that's something that people usually don't know about me. And as we talk about, so I started in college. I'd never even seen a rugby game. I met some women. They seem like they're like, join our team. Again, I'm 6 feet tall. They're like, yes, come join our team. I joined. I was like in a game 3 days later. I'd never played before. I had no clue. And so eventually over 4 years rose to captain. And I think it taught me a lot. Again, like kind of diving into things and just accepting and learning. And rugby is very much a team sport. So at the rugby I played, I had 15 on the team, whereas at the Olympics ones was 7. But and there's no hero in the sport. It's 15 as one. It's always our slogan. And so it's all about like the team has to succeed. So it was a great learning experience, and definitely not something that probably most people know. I don't play anymore. Just a college, just a moment in college.
Well, you always with rugby, it's kind of a tough sport too. Like, do you
Mhm.
a lot of bruises from like during
I
that?
did. I did.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
anything I've heard of it. Yeah, like, I played field hockey in high school, so
Mhm.
I got a few ankle bruises from that. I think rugby is like it's a whole nother level, so that's pretty impressive. So has there been a silver lining for you? So a sort of a setback. I like to think that like even when you think of COVID or things that happen, you just like I like to find, but this is what's good came out of it. Is there a
Yeah.
time you maybe had that? something happened, and then there's the silver lining. When you look back, you see this is what it brought.
Yeah. So, I think when we like are younger, we have these visions of what our life will be like. So, I'm going to be very successful, this, what, the XYZ. And, I think that I probably thought that I would like have a family earlier than I did. So in my 20s and 30s, I really leaned into my career. I leaned into friends. I leaned into things like travel. And I had some amazing experiences and, moving out to the Bay Area. But as a result, I didn't get married until I was 40 and started a family later in life. Now, my husband and I are very fortunate that we were able to start a family later. As I mentioned, I have two kids. And so, I think that was, potentially harder to not necessarily how I was expecting things as I was going through my 30s. But the silver lining of that is that now, I think I have perspective of really, I really appreciate like, and don't get me wrong, like the night being woken up in the middle of the night, like having kids, I'm exhausted, like running around. Um, but I think having them later has really afforded me that perspective and appreciation. And I think I personally, I think that I'm more appreciative and like kind of are really taking it in more than I would have if I had done the same thing when I was younger. And so I think that's the silver lining of really like having a greater appreciation as I approach this sort of next chapter.
Yeah, and also maybe in the sense that, as you said, you enjoyed your friends, you enjoyed, like, you leaned into your career, you did the things that you wanted to do, and it didn't, without, now you can do these, not these, with your
Mhm.
family, your kids. And so, like, without being back, like, what am I missing? What didn't I do? Or trying to even get things going. I don't know. So I can see, but then you have, I think there's obviously benefits to both sides of it. But personally, I think that this is a positive. You're more you now. Or, like,
Yeah.
I feel like, as far as you're going. But again, that's just my own opinion. So not for anyone who had kids young. That's all good too.
Mhm.
Whatever works. So it we all have sort of big goals. You talked about it a little bit. What we want to maybe do 5, 10 years from now, which we all know that can always very much zigzag and go differently. But I'm curious, what's your daily goal? Like, what's your daily win? When you go to bed at night, you said, okay, this was a good day because I did.
Yeah. So, a lot of it comes down, so it comes down to, I go to the office 3 days a week. So we're hybrid. And one of the things is, when we work, we spend a lot of time with our colleagues and in our jobs. And we want to make sure that we're like being able to bring our best self to work, being able to bring our passion, being able to have a good time. And if I look back at my day and I'm like, you know what? I had a really good laugh today. Like I had some fun. Like granted, we were talking about body wash, we're talking about deodorant, what have you, right? And we had some really good laughs with each other and we all enjoyed each other. We enjoyed what we're doing and like we brought our passion to it. To me, that's the mark of a good day. Similarly, if I'm in the office and I hear my colleagues or people on my team laughing and enjoying what they're doing, that's a sign of a good day because I think that in an organization, if you have people who are at work and they're present and they're passionate and they're enjoying what they're doing, the output is going to be so much greater and their ability to kind of navigate the competitive waters and think about the future because people like being there. And so, I think I really take that as a win because, it's we go to work, we go to work in theory 5 days a week, or, we're at the office working 5 days a week. And if you like it, if you're like what you're doing for that time, that's incredibly important and incredibly valuable.
Well, and you have to kind of have some laughs with your. I had a chance at my snooping, and I was watching many of your ads, and humor is definitely the top of the goal there, I would say. Aside from getting the product out
Yeah.
there, and how can you not help at least have fun coming up with these ideas?
Right, right. And we know, so especially with our male consumer, humor is a great way in to sort of tell these stories. And you're talking about things like smelling good. So, if you want your message to be sticky and you want people to listen, humor is a good way to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, just I can remember your ads, and so, and I'm not necessarily your market, but all right. I want to know because we mentioned about when you were younger and different things you did. So go even younger, very young Ellie, maybe 8, 9 years old, or maybe let's say even preteen, just going into your advice you would give young Ellie that you wish, someone had told you back then that you wish that you could tell her today?
Yeah, as I look back, I think it's, I think my parents did a great job of like, having me lean into who I really was and be proud of who I really was. But I think even more so at my teens, just, hey, everybody's different and just lean into those things that make you great and like be very unapologetic about it. And that's so hard as a teenager because I think all of us as teenagers really want to fit in and like want to be doing what everyone else is doing so that, it's just kind of fitting in with peers is so important at that age. Um, but I think even more so, just recognize like as you get older, you're gonna want to make sure that you're going to be more unapologetic for those things. So whether it's like if I look back, I was never that like person really in the cool crowd. I was always the smarter child, the smarter kid. I may have done some math competitions, things like that. And so I think kind of always being more proud of that. And I think it was easy to kind of look in the context of peers and feel a little bit like more self-conscious and be less self-conscious and more just own it.
Yeah, no, and I think that that is true, especially, and I think with boys and girls, but when you're in high school, you get labeled. And to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
imagine growing up today with social media. At
Mm-hmm.
least then, if something was, if you had bullies or whatever, it was restricted to your classroom or your neighborhood. But now
Right.
out there so much. So I do think that people just need, at a young age, feeling that way, feeling more secure with who they are. So someone, and this, my final question, so that younger person starting out, so not the teenager, now she's graduated college, and but going after what they are, like 'cause some people want to go in as, okay, this is what Ellie's like, so I got to be like this, or this is what so and so.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to transform themselves to fit into it. But
Mm-hmm.
as you said, where your strengths are, that's how you wish you would be able, could appreciate it, and that's what makes you you. So, what advice where you need to conform a bit, but also what's going to make you shine is what makes you unique? So, how would you have that 20-something-year-old just starting out approach it?
Yeah, so I think it all starts with what you're good at and what makes you happy and like what, if you think about the things that you do well and what almost puts you in the zone. So if we go to like an athletic term, think about those moments and then think about the world out there and where are places where you could bring those to life and trying to educate because I think one of the hardest things I experienced in high school and in college was even just understanding what was out there. Now with the internet now I think it's a little different, like you can go on LinkedIn and do some Google, and do Google searches and things, but um and just understanding like, okay, where would those be a really great asset, and let me start going and tackling that. But really leaning into like both what you think your strengths are and like what your passion areas are, and then try to take that information into the world and figure out and recognize that it's not all going to be a perfect puzzle piece at first, and so it's going to take a little bit of time, and you're going to learn, and then you're going to go to the next, and you're going to go to the next, and you might take a few steps back, but fundamentally as long as you keep moving forward over time, you're on the right path, and it's your path, and the journey is like kind of where all the learning happens, right? It's not about just getting to that destination. And so I think it's not all going to be, that first job is not going to be the perfect thing, but if you learn a little bit that takes you to the next, then it was the right one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's great advice. Well, Ellie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with me.
No, thank you so much, this was great.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And thank you for watching. And please, if you have anyone, a woman who you want to hear more about or find out more about, please let me know who she is, and I will do my best to get her. So thanks for watching. And again, thanks, Ellie.